Welcome back. Now, housing is one of the basic needs of man because of his desire for security, privacy, and protection from negative impacts of the environment and the social life of every Nigerian. The ability to own a home boosts one's status in society. Housing plays a vital role in improving human health as well as social and economic welfare of the society. However, despite the efforts made by various governments in Nigeria to tackle the issue of housing availability, the problem persists. I'm being joined by the CEO, North Court Limited, a real estate advisory firm, Mr. Tayo Odunsi. Good morning, Mr. Odunsi. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, talking about affordable housing. When we say affordable housing, what does that mean?
That's the biggest argument when it comes to talking about affordable housing, the definition. But the thing is this, affordable housing means different things to different people. What's affordable to me may not be affordable to someone else, you know. So that quagmire exists. But the thing... professionals have three major ways of calculating affordability, and that, I think, is what is much more important. So one way is to look at the income expenditure ratio. So rule of thumb is that you shouldn't be spending more than 30% of your monthly income or annual income on housing. So that's one way to look at it. Another way to measure affordability is the residual method, saying that 30% of your income you may not be able to even afford to spend 30% of your income, because by the time you check everything you spend, you're spending about 90% of your income on living, feeding, tuition, and all of that. And then all you have is 10%. So that's the residual method. And then the third method is using an incremental approach, saying today you may be able to spend 10% of your income on housing. Tomorrow you might even be able to spend 50% because you don't have as much expenses. So those are the ways of calculating affordability. And I think that's really what's important to note.
Okay, so who is responsible for providing affordable housing?
Okay, so you then asked a very good question, because I just recently wrote a book on affordable housing, and the premise of that was that we typically look to developers and the government to provide affordable housing. But my research shows that it's not just the government and developers that are responsible. There are 5 parties to affordable housing. Firstly, of course, is the government. They play a major role. They are definitely the regulators. They play the role of the umpire. But private sector plays a role. And that's where you have developers and financiers. They play a significant role to ensure housing is affordable. Thirdly is the professionals. The professionals are the ones that can come up with the ingenious designs, the ideas, the technical know-how to make housing truly affordable. Housing that is not horrible, but is still affordable. Fourthly is the community. We come together in communities, and our power is so strong in that we are the ones that can ensure that the house that we bought affordably remains affordable to live in. Many people have moved into their houses and they were able to afford it, but then the cost of buying things in that neighborhood skyrockets, service charges skyrocket, and it's no longer affordable. It's the community that plays that role. And lastly, the individual plays a major role. It's the individual that determines what is affordable or not. The individual is the highest decision-making body when it comes to affordable housing. So in a nutshell, I know that's quite a mouthful.
Having these 5 people responsible for affordable houses, then one would wonder, what are the challenges there? Why are they not able to give this affordable housing?
The challenges are myriad. For one, I saw the look on your face when I reeled out these 5 parties. And that's exactly the look I get from a lot of people. People don't even know that they have a role to play when it comes to affordable housing. So the first challenge I see is that professionals, individuals, communities do not realize that they have this role to play. So
tell us about this community's role in affordable housing.
So talking about the community, something that comes to mind is looking at a place like the UK, where there are people that they call NIMBYs. A NIMBY is an acronym for Not in My Backyard. NIMBYs are so strong in some communities in the UK that they control the price of milk in that community. Control the price. You can't just sell. We bought our house for £100,000. You can't just begin to change the price to 150, 200. So they make sure they can still afford their house. They make sure they can still afford the services within their neighborhood. And that's when affordable housing truly becomes sustainable. So that's a major role of the community. Again, the community is the one that appoints legislators. people that decide what are the taxes, what are the charges for housing, because these are major considerations when it comes to housing. And so that's the role of the community. As an individual, I can't play that role. As a professional, that's not my fiduciary responsibility. But when we come together as a community, we can play that role, and we can play it very well.
That is, if the government, who is the umpire, according to you,
yes,
allows that.
Yeah.
So,
okay,
where would government now come into all of these things? If the community should perhaps do their own, bringing out the those that would legislate and all that.
Yeah.
So, explain to us now this role of the government in, ensuring affordable housing?
So the role of the government is myriad. Government in some cases even plays the role of developer. We know that many states have their own property development corporations that try to provide houses that tend to be slightly cheaper than what you find available commercially. But again, like you said, one of the roles of the government is the umpire role, which is the regulator. Having that planning control. One major thing government can do, and this is one of the big advocates of my recent research, is that government can make a lot of things cheaper when it comes to housing without reducing price.
How?
So one of the things is government can make land cheaper without reducing price. It sounds funny, but the reality is, in a country like Nigeria, you can only build, and in cities like Lagos, 40 to 60%, you can only build on land 40 to 60% of the land. That, in my own opinion, is very wasteful. When you go to other cities in the world, they build on 80 to 90% of the land. They even build to up to 95% of the land, thereby making each square mile, each square meter of the land utilized. And that way, they can build almost double of what we build on our own tracts of land. That is the role of the government. I can't just go ahead and build on 90% of my land.
Instead of having it this way, you could actually have it this way.
I'm even still talking about having it this way. I'm talking about horizontally. That's one thing. Another thing is what you're alluding to, in that government can allow us intensify the use of our land vertically. So they can allow us to build more. We're in a city. Lagos is the biggest city in Nigeria, I dare say in one of the biggest cities in the whole of Africa. We shouldn't still be building a lot of bungalows and townhouses and duplexes. We should be allowed to intensify the development and the use of land. In most places, you can only build a single housing dwelling, and that is quite wasteful of land. And that is the role of the government. But again, tying it back to the community, it is our responsibility as the community to go back and say, this is what we want. These are the things that we want changed. And then hopefully a government will hear us.